Since day one on this channel, I've referred to a particular period of time in my life when a certain cascade of unpleasant events occurred in rapid succession, each one right on top of one another, as the time when everything bad happened. At the beginning, you could argue that the first few things that happened primarily happened to me. It was my parents who got sick and then soon after died, and it was I who got testicular cancer. My wife was an invaluable support to me throughout that entire period, which lasted until about the end of 1998. I never could have gotten through that without her. I don't know what I would have done. Well, never say never. In another year, I was going to learn exactly what it was like to go through a disaster without her. And as it turned out, it sucked. Hello friends, welcome to Mr. Snayl's Wild Ride. I am Mr. Snayl, and the wild ride is my life so far. So it turns out everything bad got really, really bad when my wife wound up in the hospital for 2 months. That's when it felt like things went really south. For the years we'd been together up until that point, it felt like together we could do anything. But then when the doctors had to put her in a drug-induced coma so that she could fight off the infection she had, well, that felt like, that's it, we're totally fucked now. That's where this story starts. This is my wife's debut memoir about the time she spent in that coma and the 10-year slog to recovery that came after it. That time was a nightmare for both of us. After more than 10 years of work and the contributions of quite a number of people, we have finally pulled the whole thing together. It took a village to create this book. My wife started writing it right after she got out of the hospital because she couldn't do anything else. Back in 2011, my wife asked me to do a technical edit of what was then the current draft, and as I read it, it felt sort of anemic. It read more like a study guide of what had happened than an actual recounting of events. Now, I had been there. I'd heard her tell the anecdotes before, and I'd seen most of it happen firsthand. So I knew what the book could be, and this wasn't it. So we wound up spending the next 6 months going through it, line by line. I didn't want to change what she had. I just wanted to make sure that the text said what she wanted it to say. She has a unique and compelling voice, and I wasn't going to just go in there and rewrite everything and strip that away. After a while, I got a feel for her style, and we were able to pick up the pace a bit. We rewrote it that summer, page by page. Once we were finished fleshing out the first half of the book, I sort of stayed on to help support her development of the second half while she wrote it. Now that was actually difficult in a different way. Now I was helping her shape the story more directly. Plus the ending kept changing. See, that's the thing when you're writing about real life, is that there really is no the end point. You just have to pick a place to stop, and sometimes that's hard. But now the book is done, it's tight, and early reviews have been extremely positive. My wife really pushed to list me as a co-author on this book. Now obviously it is my story to a degree, but a lot of other people worked on this as well. I argued against it since it is, in my mind, really her story. In the end, she pushed, and so finally I compromised, so my name is on this project also. So if you want to know the gruesome details and specifics of how everything bad happened, and want to hear one person's first-hand experience of being in a coma, paralyzed, yet fully aware of everything that's going on around her. A woman whose husband, an undiagnosed autistic, felt virtually paralyzed the entire time. A woman whose life totally bottomed out in ways she hadn't even thought possible. And yet she still was able to somehow recover and reconstruct her life. Go to reconstructionbook.com for more info. And if you're on the fence, you can download the first 2 chapters free to get an idea of what's in store. So in just a couple of weeks, she's going to launch her Kickstarter campaign to rally support for promoting the book. These are very exciting times. Of course, I am terrified because I haven't figured out how I'm going to deal with her unavailability. But I've been trying something new for the last couple of weeks, and I plan on sharing the results of my ongoing independence experiment with you all next time. But in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video, and go to reconstructionbook.com to sign up and get your sneak peek. See you next week, peek! So it turns out everything bad got really, really bad when my wife wound up in the hospital for 2 months. That's where this story starts. My wife started writing it just as soon as she got out of the coma. It was more like a study guide Back in 2011, she asked me to do a technical edit of what was then the current, It read more like a study guide of what had happened than an actual accounting of the events. And I forgot what was next. I had been there. I think she has a unique and compelling voice, and I didn't want to change that. Or something. Plus the ending kept changing. See, that's the thing about writing about were my parents who got sick. It was my parents. It was my parents who got sick. Who got sick? My parents. Well, it was my parents. Yeah, I don't know.